like just out and
There
about
we
too in the
go. All
community.
right. I think we're up
We're
now.
here.
We are live.
We are live.
Like we're supposed to be. Just make
Let me
sure.
just share it.
Post and drop the volume. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Pleasant Thursday to all of you. Hope you're doing well. Hope your week went well or is going well so far. Welcome to Dollars and Cents. Good to have you all. We are on Facebook. We're on YouTube as well. So shout outs to all of you, whether you're watching now or you're going to be watching later on. Myself, KP, or Kenton. You also know me as KP. We have Keisha with us as well. Busy as usual. And Billy, who's equally busy as Keisha. Shout outs always to Wade, who is normally here with us. Every now and then, Wade will pop in to, round out the team. But today we have an extra special guest, a very special guest with us. More than happy to have her. Before she says anything, well, I'm just extending the welcome to her. But before she says anything, I gotta share her bio first, and then from there we proceed to having a conversation. But thank you all once again for watching. Remember, if you are watching it, just share it with a friend. Share it with someone as well, so that they can experience what we're going to be talking about. Miss Rosemary Sadlier, Order of Ontario. She is a social justice advocate, researcher, writer, consultant, and I'm going to take my time because I'm just going to give her flowers, okay? Consultant and an international speaker on Black history, anti-racism, and women's issues. She is the past president, serving for 22 years as the unpaid leader of the Ontario Black History Society, being the driving force of the secured commemoration of February as Black History Month at all levels of government. She secured August 1st as Emancipation Day municipally in 1995 and provincially in 2008, with a national declaration finally achieved in March 2021.
Wow, can we just pause for a second? Like, yes, we have Rosemary to thank for Black History Month, Emancipation Day. Yes, thank you for your service. So carry on. Just have to shout out.
I'll continue. She saw to the creation of the National Day for the Honorable Lincoln Alexander. She has given deputations to the UN Rapporteur on Race Relations, the federal and provincial governments, and on consultative work with the Royal Ontario Museum, the Ward Heritage Interpretive Group, the Binational Study of the Underground Railroad and Heritage Conferences. Previously, she served on the final selection committee of the National, is it Matthew DaCosta? Okay, Matthew DaCosta Challenge for Canadian Heritage, and is now on the Canada Post Stamp Advisory Committee. An educator, she has developed or contributed to African Canadian curriculum, national exhibits, and she was an appointed member of the College of Early Childhood Educators. She was among the first Canadian designated as a Global Defender of Human Rights, CTF, and Robert Kennedy Center. An author, Sadlier has written 7 books on African Canadian history. Sadlier is dedicated to social justice and using the frame of Black history seeks to educate and empower others. Wow.
And she's educating and empowering us. What
Yes.
a blessing for her to join us this afternoon. Thank
Definitely.
you, Rosemary. Thank you for your service, and thank you for lending your wisdom and experience with us.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. In terms of our platform, we started when there are so many things happening. 2020, we saw a whole lot of turmoil in terms of on the social justice end, and of course, we're dealing with COVID and all these different things. And we decided to start this platform here to help our community, right? So normally, on here we talk about by us and for us, right? And having a person like you to help us to keep educating our community is definitely a plus, and it's good to have you. Good to have you. We're looking forward to hearing all the good things that you're going to be sharing with us today.
Yeah, I was going to say our slogan for our platform here, Rosemary, is bringing knowledge and opportunity to those in our community. And, that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve in some way, shape, or form to give back to the community. So we are happy to have you here, to share, your knowledge, your expertise, so that those who are listening, can gain something from what we have to present here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Rosemary, just before we go into anything in depth, can you just tell us a little bit in terms? I didn't see, I know you're Canadian. You're born in Canada. You're from what's your connection here in terms of being there in Canada?
What's the right answer to that question? It is going to be part of my presentation, but let me just say that I'm here. I'm Canadian.
Okay. All right, that's fine. If you're gonna do that, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, we'll whenever you're ready, we'll jump right into it. Billy.
Yeah, I was just saying, we thought it was so awesome to have Rosemary with us this week because for those of you who may not know, we're coming up on Juneteenth. It's an American holiday and something that KP, I'm sure, will be, participating in things all, happening all down there in the States. But we thought, it would be a good opportunity to learn more about Juneteenth. And Rosemary so graciously agreed to share her wealth of knowledge about many things Black history related, in particular Juneteenth. So we're excited to have Rosemary with us and share some of her wisdom. Over to you.
All right, Rosemary, you can just direct us whenever you're ready.
Well, I put together a really brief presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was mindful of the time, and I wanted to make sure I stayed on the time as much as I could. So I will begin with what I prepared, and certainly if people have questions, I'm really happy to take those questions. I think that's how people learn. It's not just what you hear, it's what you question and get an answer to in real time. I also think that what happens in Canada a lot is that we tend to try to find a way to acknowledge First Nations. And I'm going to offer my acknowledgements and before I move on. So because this is virtual, people are obviously on different lands that have been in the trust of First Nations for generations. So my initial acknowledgement is that we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples who have been living and working on the land since time immemorial. But I would also, because I think that this is a piece that is often missing, like to acknowledge that this land was settled and supported very early by people of African descent. And here I'm making reference in particular to Canada. The first named African, not the first African, but the first one we have a name for, being translator Matthew da Costa by 1604, and of the ongoing and seminal contribution made by him and those who preceded and followed in Canada's development. I acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced by the transatlantic slave trade, brought against their will, and made to work on these lands. We must fully acknowledge and understand how our history of inequality continues to this day. We also must acknowledge that African Canadians were an integral part of shaping Canadian history through their resilience, and our history would not be the same without the Black experience. The past few years, of course, this is the friend that we're dealing with, COVID-19 and Omicron. And I think that what this has done, it's put us in a position to really think about what is important. What is important to ourselves, to our health, to our mental health, and even to our community's health.
Rosemary, did you want me to share this?
You're not sharing?
No, it's not on the screen. I didn't realize that you're.
Yes, I'm sharing.
Okay, there we go.
Well, let me go back then just quickly so people can just see what I had here.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yes.
So that's the acknowledgements. That's COVID-19, your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to make light of something very serious, but yes. But then, of course, we have the public execution of a Black man named George Floyd, which sparked the real global protest we often call the Black Lives Matters movement, although it had already existed. And maybe at another time, we might have not paid as much attention, but the combination of being at home, being isolated, being with family, having different kinds of conversations, I think really put us in a place where we really wanted to work through what we wanted, not just in terms of health, but also in terms of social justice. And the George Floyd incident in Canada was closely timed to the Regis Krasinski-Paquette curious death, the Breonna Taylor murder, and in Canada, again, the Joyce Ekukwan, a First Nations woman who was abused as she lay dying in hospital. And so I think that with this different kind of attention that was being paid to these egregious acts against visible racialized people, we had to consider what we need to know about racism, and we had to be mindful about how to prepare ourselves and our communities. Now, at the top of the hour here, I was asked what my background is, and let me start by just saying that I was born in Toronto. I was the part of the only Black family in our neighborhood, the only Black kid in my class at school, but I certainly arrived in school knowing what all of the stereotypes were and knowing how much we suffered from a lack of representation in media, school textbooks, movies, advertising, and so forth. No representation. I recall being advised not to go to university, even though white students who had grades that were as good as mine were being encouraged to go to university. I remember in high school, they would have things called slave auctions, which we were supposed to find humorous, and I wouldn't participate. And we were also being taught that Black people were inferior by people who were very nice people, but who were representing a system that was not very nice nor very fair. But I was also very lucky because I was part of a Black church. And I offer this not because of the spiritual teachings per se, but because it was a Black church. And I had the opportunity to see a rainbow of people who looked like me, who did a whole lot of different things. So from Monday to Saturday, because I went to a Methodist church, it was Sunday. From Monday to Saturday, I was in a white community. But on Sunday, I saw Black people, and I saw them in their beauty, in their competence, and in their agency. Just to answer the question further, I do realize I'm melanin deprived. But, both of my parents are Black. My mother, the descendant of those who came into southern Ontario, not Windsor, on the Underground Railroad, and built up communities, churches, schools, owned property, and they arrived in Canada about 1830. However, I didn't fully appreciate my father's side of the family. And what I came to understand about his side is that my father's family represents the first 4 waves of immigration or migration into Canada of Black people. They were the Black loyalists. They were the late loyalists. They were the refugees of the War of 1812. And that means that my father's family, that I placed myself in this country since 1783. One thing I just want to say about that is that I had an opportunity to go to not Nova Scotia. There's other places in Canada where Black people find themselves, pretty much everywhere. But my father's family was from New Brunswick. And I never lived in New Brunswick. My father had left New Brunswick as a young person, so he really didn't know much about New Brunswick. But there were Black communities that were quite separate from white communities. And when I went to New Brunswick on a book tour, I saw a beautiful community, lovely, picturesque, called, I think, Rothsay, and it was on the water, lovely homes, very pleasant. And then I saw the communities where Black people lived. And the results were very striking because these were people who came into the country at the same point in time, but somehow their treatment and their experience and their ability to generate better lifestyles was really curtailed by factors that were not always so obvious. That's me. That's 1996, February 1996. And I became the president of the Ontario Black History Society in 1993. And at that point in time, there had been a celebration of February as Black History Month in the city of Toronto that had been built upon the efforts that the Canadian Negro Women's Association had already effected in the 1950s. Their celebration was within the Black community. The Ontario Black History Society, under the leadership of Dr. Daniel G. Hill, Wilson O. Brooks, Joan Kazmarski, Lorraine Hubbard, and others, effected the first commemoration of February as Black History Month that was for everyone in the city of Toronto in 1979. But by the time I became the president of the Ontario Black History Society in 1993, I was horrified to find out that I had missed the deadline to go to the city of Toronto to have them proclaim February as Black History Month. Now you have to remember, I was an at-home mom. I was still nursing my third child. I didn't go into the office very often. There was a change when I had become president. We didn't know. It was an honest mistake. So I called in all kinds of favors and was able to have Black History Month proclaimed that year. And I realized that there's something wrong with this process. It could be lost again if I were no longer president, if there's a change in the office staff and so on. So I tried to secure a permanent proclamation with the city of Toronto, but I also realized that this was important enough that it should be celebrated across the province, the state, the province. And I was able, through our contact with the province of Ontario, Daniel O'Brien, to have it effected. Realizing that this was how important this was, having already built up a community of interest through doing hundreds, frankly thousands, of Black history presentations in schools, community groups, and other settings, I was able to create a community of interest of people who wanted to see something like a Black History Month happen. So I was able to approach various members of the federal government to advocate for a national Black History Month. And in the meantime, I also was able to have an acknowledgement of February as Black History Month with every province in the country. So by the time Jean Augustine accepted my proposal to have a national Black History Month, there was already a groundswell of support to see this happen. She was able to have it go through the House of Commons in December 1995, and in February 1996, we celebrated the very first national February as Black History Month. So here you have it. This is on the Government of Canada's website. Rosemary Sadlier introduced the idea of having Black History Month declared across Canada.
So amazing.
So here I am on stage with the Prime Minister of Canada, Jean Chrétien.
Jean Chrétien. Okay, all right. I was going to ask.
In the background, you see our very few members of the Black Caucus at the time. It was Hedy Fry and Ovid, and I believe, who is that? I'm not even sure. And an honorary member, Sheila Copps. Yeah, there we are. And I gave a presentation to a full room in Ottawa, a packed auditorium. And it was really so exciting. And I really felt that it was going to be the beginning of even more wonderfulness happening for the Black community. What else do I want to say about this? Yeah, okay. So this is the 20th anniversary. Again, I'm in Ottawa. And here we are celebrating the 20th anniversary, and that was a few years ago. But what you don't see is the 90% cut to the provincial funding of the OBHS and the lack of federal funding that slowed the progress of anything happening in terms of Black history, while allowing the community to feel that all was well. I took my responsibility as the head of the OBHS very seriously. It was a precious legacy to me. But you should know that it was my personal resilience, along with the work of a very few dedicated volunteers, that kept this significantly underfunded Black space open. The Ontario Black History Society was the only Black history provincial heritage organization in Canada. Just as a reminder, Black history doesn't begin in Canada, it begins in Africa, and I won't get into all of the amazing kingdoms because time is moving on here. But the transatlantic slave trade, I think, is very critical because that informs how we are treated even today. This triangular trade provided profit on every leg of the journey for Europeans, not so much for Africans. And it's important to remember that the enslavement of African peoples was legal in the lands we now call Canada. It began under the French domain. It continued when the British took over and did not end until August 1st, 1834. It was supported by law and practice. And Canada, while we didn't necessarily have a direct connection of slave ships coming into Canadian harbors, we certainly were connected through international trade and the timber to create some of those slave ships came from Canada. So it was, for example, the Code Noir that helped to cement the legal possibility of slavery of First Nations and Africans on the lands we now call Canada. And slavery was given formal but limited approval by 1709. The first enslaved woman that we have a lot of information about who essentially burned down Montreal pointedly or by accident in her escape was Marie Joseph Angelique, and that was in 1734. So I think it's important to keep mentioning these certain incidents of enslavement, because otherwise it's as if Canada did not have slavery. Canada had slavery from 1628 until 1834, the slavery of Africans. Let me go back to that one. Slavery was such that in Canada, people who had already come in as Black loyalists or with Black loyalists found the situation so untenable that they left. And they went to Sierra Leone, helped to found that colony. In Ontario, not too far from where I am, there was a woman named Chloe Cooley, and forms the basis of a Heritage Minute that you may have seen. And she was owned by someone in the Niagara area. He found out that the lieutenant governor who had come into the area was going to free slaves. So he decided he didn't want to lose his investment in the slave he owned. So he had her bound, thrown into a boat, and rowed across the Niagara River to be sold to Americans. But she made so much noise because she was fighting as best she could under the circumstances that the lieutenant governor came to know about the situation. He tried to pass legislation, but he was unsuccessful because many people who he was in government with owned slaves. So it was compromised legislation, and it only freed white indentured slaves. Many of you, the Jamaicans on the line, know about the Maroons, and you know about the history of the Maroons in Jamaica. But You also know that they were ultimately tricked after being so successful at fending off the British for such a long time. They were tricked, and really ferocious hounds were brought in to pull them out of their hiding places in the hills. And as many as 600 of them were brought to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where they were required to build the citadel or a fort on top of in Halifax, which you can visit today. But they weren't happy, and they asked to be sent back to Africa too, and they were. Newspapers came into being because, in part, Africans were running away. And this was a means of being able to advertise that you had a slave that had run away, so that other people would know and they would help you locate your property. We were property in this country. So the British Imperial Act, or the Slavery Abolition Act, came into effect August 1st, 1834. It had been passed the year before in 1833, but because the British Empire was global, it took a year for them to get out to all of their possessions, and they were to delay the announcement of this freedom until August 1st, 1834. They organized it so that the orchestration of this freedom would take place on the same day. In Canada, it went into effect immediately on August 1st, 1834. And in some other countries, it also went into effect immediately. But in places like Jamaica, it did not, because Africans were not trusted with their own freedom. And there was a 4-year graduated freedom that was put in place. So basically, freedom didn't happen for some people until 1838. But this is when I was able to have Bill 111, which made August 1st Emancipation Day in the province of Ontario happen. It was the first unanimous bill, which means all parties supported it. All parties, all political parties. That was phenomenal. And so we have members here, which only those in Ontario would appreciate, but there are Liberal Party members, NDP Party members, and Progressive Conservative Party members, all here, who were part of celebrating this with us. My process, I started working on having August 1st as Emancipation Day around the same time that I started working on Black History Month. So in 1994, I began the same process, creating, having events, having educational events, talking, hosting events, creating interest in Emancipation Day. And that's why by 2008 it had gone through with the province of Ontario. But I had also been able to have it go to second reading twice in the House of Commons under the leadership of MP Deepak Obdrai. But it didn't go through on both those occasions. And he really tried, and I appreciated what he did. And he was an MP, a member of Parliament from Canada's Western provinces. I continued my efforts to have August 1st commemorated as Emancipation Day. I introduced the idea to MP Greg Fergus. I introduced it to Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard in 2015, 2016. And they were not as ready to see it happen. I introduced it to my own MP at the time, Arif Farani. But by over time, there was interest. And this photo is taken from the second reading that took place in the Senate of Canada to see August 1st as Emancipation Day. But it didn't go through again. I had to keep advocating for this. I have created petitions to see August 1st as Emancipation Day. I have had to lobby many things. But ultimately, under the leadership of MP Majid Jahari back in Canada's House of Commons, it was passed unanimously on March 21st, I believe, 2021. March 24th, March 21st. Anyway, it was passed last year. So it took years for something as straightforward as the freedom of Black people in this country, which really meant the freedom of all people in this country, to be officially recognized by the government of Canada. Which takes me back to what is freedom? Because some people think that once slavery ended, everything's good. But not really. Because once slavery ended, a slavery that had been formalized in 1628 and continued until 1834, you could be free, but still not be able to find a job or be welcomed in a neighborhood or get the professional training you might wish in order to improve your circumstances, no matter how skilled you were. You still would have to deal with prejudices. You would still have to be prevented from joining certain clubs or churches. And in Canada, we did have segregated schools, segregated theaters, and informal types of segregation in terms of accommodation and hiring and many other areas. Everybody knows about Harriet Tubman. And just quickly, of course, we know about something called the Underground Railroad. Well, if there had not been this thing called Emancipation Day, if there had not been this thing that meant that there was freedom to be found formally in Canada, people wouldn't have had a place to go because laws were changing in the northern United States. So initially, even somebody like Harriet Tubman only brought people into the northern United States to be free when she made her brave escapes. But when the laws changed and the Second Fugitive Slave Act came into effect, she had no choice but to bring them all to Canada. And that is what she did in as many as 19 rescue missions, 11 of them taking her to St. Catharines, Ontario. Marianne Shadd was somebody who wrote about this and many other things. By 1851, Canada was seen as a place where Black people could come to meet. The first convention of colored freemen was held not too far from where I happen to reside in downtown Toronto at St. Lawrence Hall. And people came from all over Canada, the United States, and Britain to speak about the benefits of residence in Canada, given the uncertainty of freedom in the United States. Black people were discouraged from coming into Canada as recently as 1911 because they were being told that they would not be able to survive our climate, even though Matthew Henson managed to make it to the North Pole. And I'm putting this slide up because in a couple of weeks, the government of Canada will be issuing an apology to the descendants of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. This is not the full battalion. This is just one of the many bands in the No. 2 Construction Battalion that was formed during World War I. And that cute guy on the right is the grandfather I never met. I think he's cute. And the cute guy on the left is a cousin. And all the other cute guys are cousins.
I'll leave that for Keisha and Billy to agree with.
Oh no, we agree.
Well, you have to find a little humor.
Absolutely.
I never met him, so I mean I don't know what he was like as a person. Long dead before I was born. This is just what because this is dollars and cents, I wanted to make sure that people knew about Viola Desmond. And Viola Desmond was the first, an early woman, an early businesswoman in the Halifax area. She recognized that there was a need for Black hair products and Black beauty products. Couldn't get any beautician training in Canada, went to the States, probably trained under Madam C.J. Walker, came back to Halifax, started her own beauty school, created her own range of Black beauty products. And one day, she was in Halifax. One day, this amazing woman who had her own car, which was kind of novel for the time, wanted to take her products to New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. There was a large Black community there. And I don't know that she'd ever necessarily been to New Glasgow, but it would have probably taken her a very long time to get there, given the roads at the time. And when she got there, her car had developed trouble. So she ended up having to leave her car in a garage to be fixed. She also left her glasses in the car. And to kill time, she went into a theater to watch a movie. And she said she wanted to buy a ticket for a seat on the main floor. She gave her money, got a ticket, went in. And she was told, oh, no, you can't sit here. So she went back out to the ticket counter to find out what the problem was. And they basically told her that Black people couldn't sit on the main floor. They had to sit in the balcony. Segregated theaters that didn't exist in Halifax. So she didn't have her glasses. She didn't want to waste her money or her time. She just went back in and sat on the main floor anyway. She was dragged out by the manager and a police officer. Her hip was injured. She was put in jail. She was not allowed to get legal representation. The next day, she was charged with defrauding the government of Nova Scotia. The tax difference between an upstairs and a main floor and a balcony seat. And that tax difference amounted to about 1 cent. So it really wasn't about the tax difference. It wasn't about the money. It was about the reality that she had breached the segregational practices of that theater. And they were not willing to see that happen. So it's a long and involved story, but over time, her sister made her story known to the world. And in the process, the government of Canada ended up, and I meant to put that in here, but ended up putting her on our new $10 bill. So I think that's kind of an important step. It's symbolic. It doesn't change some things, but it's wonderful symbolism. So in terms of even more modern times, the vast majority of Black women who are entrepreneurs in Canada say that they face significant barriers in financing, because often you have a great idea, but you need opportunities, you need supports in order to make those ideas realities. And Nadine Spencer, who is the president of the Black Business and Professional Association, has added that the pandemic has put many businesses in jeopardy, in addition to the systemic discrimination and anti-Black racism that Black female entrepreneurs already face. Which of course tracks back to the whole transatlantic slave trade and ongoing perceptions and misperceptions about the Black community. And as she says, women do have a tougher go at it, and Black women even more so. So some people talk about what they call roscas, or things that I think many of you know better as susu, or esusu, or ayutu, or hagbad, or egub, or box hand, or partner, or return, or soul. And people are talking about more informal ways of helping to create wealth or create opportunities for women. And Black Canadians have contributed a lot to what we know about Canada's social economy because of their innovation in using susu, especially when they form a significant part of the population in places like New York, Miami. I know you're in Fort Lauderdale, but Miami, Toronto, and Montreal. The banker ladies, they create banking alternatives. And certainly, Marcus Garvey is somebody that talked about what we have to do for ourselves as a community. And the Porters are also people who encouraged and showed by the creation in Canada of the first Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters how important that is. Viola Desmond, we talked about her. I should also just add, just to go back, people want to think that we're post-racial. And you would think that once slavery happened, it's all good. But 100 years later, 110 years later, 110 years after slavery was abolished in this country, there was still a need for Ontario to pass a racial discrimination act. And this was championed by a Black man, a veteran who had come back from World War II and went back to his home in Dresden, Ontario, and was prevented from going into a restaurant. And of course, this is before we had McDonald's or takeout places like that. You had to go in and sit down and order, and nobody would serve him in his own hometown where he had already risked his life. We have people like Willie O'Ree, who became the first Black person to be part of the NHL. Leonard Braithwaite in Ontario, the first member of provincial parliament, who worked on closing the last segregated school in Ontario in 1963. We have West Indian immigration. It increased in the between 1962 and 1967 because the immigration law made it possible for women to come in a little bit easier. And we have also at the same time a Black community, a historic Black community, being completely decimated because people claimed they wanted the land for some other purposes. But just as time is moving here, another woman who did incredibly well in the beauty business in Toronto was Bev Maskell. And Bev Maskell, I worked with her on the Matthew DaCosta Awards, final selection committee of the Matthew DaCosta Awards. She was a beautiful woman, a wonderful person, did a lot of charitable work, but she earned her fortune because she ended up becoming the sole distributor for Johnson products at a time when women were looking for Ultra Sheen and hair care products that allowed them to fit into a dominant norm of what a Black woman should look like in the workplace. We have the rise of Black newspapers like Contrast, which later became Share. And we have the actualization of the first Black member of Parliament, who later went on to become the first Black Lieutenant Governor or Queen's representative in Canada, the Honorable Lincoln Alexander. But be mindful that for Black women, things are not always so equitable. And I was happy to find some examples of Black women very recently who are doing incredibly well in the financial market, but that does not mean that all Black women or all Black people are doing incredibly well. Like Jemmy, and I won't try to pronounce her last name in case I get it wrong, but she's vice president at BMO, BMO, Bank of Montreal, and in their capital markets. And she's an experienced finance professional with 12 years experience. She's doing incredibly well. We have somebody like Loveland Toyo, a Nigerian who began her career in capital markets, and she is with the Royal Bank of Canada, doing incredibly well. We also know that there is a consortium of Black Canadians who have been in the process of requesting a license for a Pan-African credit union, and there have been other attempts at this, initially initiated by the Jamaica Canadian Association and the Lions Circle African Men's Association and the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. We know the Black Canadian women hold the keys to innovation. And this is somebody who I think is interesting to know about, because in Canada, fewer than 1 in 10 venture funds have a woman as a managing partner. And when you narrow that down, it's not very many people. Lise worked in finance internationally. She was raised in Montreal, and she's a firm believer in using the forces of capital markets as a basis for more inclusive wealth creation. She says, I realized that this was real empowerment, supporting the creation of role models in different societies by giving them the means to build something on their own, which would then have a ripple effects on their communities. She also says, so far what we're finding among the companies we're looking at is this embedded resilience. Many have had a hard time finding financing and have had to be really creative to get to where they are now. So, yesterday, the police apologized to the Black community, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but I think because this is business and sense, and I'm looking at the time, I think I'll stop on this slide. A Black university graduate, and this is not today's statistics, this might be from statistics maybe from 2 or 3 years ago, earns only 80 cents for every dollar earned by white university graduates, despite having the same credentials. And of course, that's assuming they get their foot in the door. So we have some real challenges, but I think we have some real hope for the future. And maybe that's where I'll leave it for now.
If you wanted to take a couple more minutes or a few more minutes to say something else, Rosemary, go ahead. We did start a little bit behind. I know you flipped through a few slides there, but if you wanted to say some other things.
Well, I need to have a drink.
Well, this was amazing. This was such amazing information and knowledge shared, and really helped me to feel personally even more motivated with the work that we do. You know, in providing knowledge, in providing opportunities, you know, where people may not know about that's really what we want to do, bring knowledge and awareness related to things that are dollars and cents, as it relates to dollars, like actual, you know, fiat, but also the sense of, you know, navigating the space in our skin. And this, you know, every time I listen to Rosemary, I'm always so inspired and motivated, you know, to continue. And Rosemary, thank you again for your work and your resilience.
Yes.
You have really taught a lesson on persistence and resilience. And, you know, I'm just like, how do we teach our kids? How do we teach ourselves to have that kind of, because it takes time for things to happen, right? The efforts that you went through just to have Emancipation Day established, right? I mean, that work was from the beginning when you started in 1995, right?
And this doesn't mean that there weren't people who were celebrating Emancipation Day.
Right.
They weren't looking to have it officially commemorated, because
Right.
if we do things in our own little corner, which is fine, it becomes, the family picnic. Well, people may not even be aware of why they're having the family picnic. And I think that was the case for some celebrations that were taking place in this country. In Windsor, there was a huge picnic, and it was huge. They had Motown, they had Eleanor Roosevelt as part of it, but it unfortunately ended in the 60s because of police intervention, but nobody at that time was seeking to have it formally commemorated.
Yes.
The creation of Caravana, as important as that was in celebrating Canada's centennial, it didn't seek to formally commemorate Emancipation Day. And so that is what I did. And that is what I worked on since about 1994.
Yeah.
Along that vein, because I wrote that down. Funny enough, Billy asked the same question regarding Emancipation Day. And a lot of times when Black folks speak up or we push real hard for something, we're viewed in a certain way. We're antagonistic. We are vociferous, and we're or more vulgar. You're just that loud, Black, ignorant person, right? I mean, what was it like did you get any of those type of comments or anything written? Because I really admire the fact that you just stuck with it.
Yes.
And to the point where in 2021, it became, something.
One of the lessons and one of the things that, because I'm not just talking church, I'm talking church is many different lessons. For me, it was. And of course, there's the spiritual lesson, which I am not speaking to right now.
Right.
Were also those other lessons of seeing what people were doing in that space and seeing the sacrifices and the purposefulness of their efforts, despite incredible challenges and deprivation in many ways. I saw Black churches that were functioning with so very little resources in small towns across this country. So I know what it means to be able to do things when you are fully funded and it's so easy. And I also know what it means to do things when you're purpose driven. And I'm very purpose driven, very purpose driven. And I also had children. And I think that, I don't want to sound completely out of it, but I think that many people go through this when you have children. I mean, I left university and you think that the world is a better place because you talk about a better place at university. You talk about how things could be if only. And there's a part of you that wants to believe that's the world you were stepping out back into. But you're not. And when I had children and my children were coming back reflecting the same stuff that I had gone through, then, and that happened to coincide with when I was nominated to be on the board, and I was on the board of the OBHS for 3 years before I became president. So I was 25 years with that organization without pay. But I used that as I came in already knowing what we needed to have happen. And I already knew that it took us 400 years to get here. All in a minute. And so as frustrated and as impatient and as angry as I would be very often, there was really no point in putting that out into the world because it wasn't going to change something that had taken 400 years for us to get to this point. And not that I'm happy to see small changes, no, but every change can create another change. And every change can encourage somebody else to also then say, hey, what can I do?
Man.
That is powerful.
I was gonna. God called you for this. I mean, because what you're talking about in my realm, and for most of us, we would understand this. You need the patience of God in order to, deal with all the obstacles and the time factor. You need patience and stick to itiveness, right?
Yes.
Love it. I think in terms of we have a question here coming on. Let me see if I can show it from Rosalind. It says here, "What do you think of the police chief's apology yesterday?"
Silence.
No, granted, I'm not there, so I'm not too sure what you all make.
Okay. Sorry, let me just turn off my phone.
Mhm.
I believe that the way I think that it was a first step. And I'm not sure how many apologies really have happened yet. I think that we need to see more actionable items acted upon that I'm not sure were spoken to. When I became president of the Ontario Black History Society, for example, in 1993. And it isn't like there had not been other people in other organizations and individually already speaking with the police, talking about community concerns, even then, even before, and on an ongoing basis. So I think that there is a level of anger for some members of the community, particularly those who um, feel that what was apologized for isn't really what needs to be changed. And as somebody put it, we didn't really ask you for an apology, we asked you for actions. And so I think that some of the things that will make the situation better will be to see some of the actions.
Excellent. I mean, in terms of we get that a lot from politicians, don't we? A lot of tokenisms, right? But in terms of actionable things, what are you going to put in place that will remain in place in order to rectify what we're dealing with and, moving forward so that things can get better. But, wow.
And I think, apologies can be many things,
Mhm.
but I think that you have to do more than say sorry. You have to see what you're going to do better next time. If we're talking on an interpersonal basis, for example, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm sorry, and I will, whatever it is that can make things
It's an
better.
action item.
Yeah, and I'm not as clear on that part. So that's the part that I imagine a lot of people will be holding the chief of police and Toronto Police Services, or as somebody put it, Toronto Police Force. That's what they're going to be holding them to.
All right. Thank you, Rosalind, for that question. Keisha, you were going to say something?
Nope. I'm just here taking it in. I think it's a wealth of information. Very much, I was very much educated today, so I'm very happy for that. Yeah.
What was the most important thing for you, Keisha? I'm just curious.
The most
I'm
important thing for
on
me.
the spot, but it's always interesting to me to know what was. I always feel like there has to be at least one thing that resonates with a person, at least one. I mean, and what was that? Was there a one thing for you?
Yeah, there was actually. I didn't realize that um, there was racism in Canada in the sense of when the Underground Railroad was happening. I thought that it was a safe haven, that those in America through the Underground Railroad, when they're coming over here, was because, Canada was this place of, love and harmony, right? I guess I didn't dig that deep to find out that, yeah, it still existed, right? I thought we didn't have that, these laws of slavery here, and this was a free land that they came and made life.
And that was a shock for me too, because even though I'm a product of the Underground Railroad, I didn't know that because it wasn't taught to me.
Correct.
Right.
I was horrified when I realized that on these lands that we now call Canada, there had been slavery. I was absolutely shocked. And I think that the other piece that I didn't get into when we when we talk about the Underground Railroad is the reality that there were people on both sides of the border who felt that the best position a person of African origin should hold is as a slave. That they maintain those values and those views. And so that is why we have the continuation of, we see it throughout our systems, because the same systems that came from Britain helped to seed the systems in the United States, what we now call the United States, and helped to seed the systems that we use in Canada. So that is why it's called systemic racism.
Right.
But I'm like you. When I found that out, I didn't always know. I was horrified. I thought that meant that everybody here, that generally white people were open and accepting, and that way of looking at it a bit differently helped to explain many inconsistencies, because there were going to be people who didn't have open and progressive views, and there were people who did.
Very true.
Why, Rosemary, why do you think it took so long in terms of Emancipation Day or any other thing that we try to do in Canada, or since I'm from there as well, but in Canada, or why does it take? Is it the politicians? It's just the natural process that it goes through. Things just take time, or it's just that the will isn't there. There wasn't enough notoriety to this, or they didn't see the benefit to them.
People truly
in each instance, because I saw it, like, municipally it was relatively quick.
Right.
I got it with the City of Toronto, Metro Toronto, and with the City of Ottawa. That was relatively quick. The Province of Ontario, 2008. But it went to the House of Commons twice. It went to the Senate twice. And sometimes what happens is make it easy, it timed out. So, if it happens, you have first reading, you have second reading, and then you're supposed to have third reading, and the session ends. It's summer, and bang, oh, that's it, we're done. And so anything that didn't get passed won't get passed. In the case of the two times it went to second reading with the House, it was a private member's bill. And those are very, very special and very precious for each member of Parliament. So, this man, he sacrificed a personal bill that he could use for his personal immediate constituents to try and get Emancipation Day done. And he did it twice. He wasn't going to do it a third time because he had his constituents that are going to be looking for him to do something specific to him locally. So it kind of depends on different points in time and different people.
Okay.
I think that there also, though, is the other side of it. I think that, political will has a lot to do with it. And if there is political will, it happens. And I think that George Floyd, God bless him, because he can never begin to realize the significance his passing has had on the world. But his passing really at that time and with that vividness has really made, no one can say, I didn't know. And I think that's what makes it a bit different now.
Yeah, that was a very powerful moment. It was sad, but it was very powerful for everybody to just see that unfold in front of them. Everything was, it was just the right moment. Like I said, it was a bad situation, but we're all at home. COVID-19 is here, and we got to hear and see it. And I think huge moment, that's for sure.
Like the perfect storm.
Perfect, yes. Yes.
I didn't show you my books. Oh my gosh. I'm
Yes,
supposed to do that.
please.
Yes.
Talk to us.
Please.
Talk to us.
Oh, there we go. There's one. The Kids' Book of Black Canadian History.
Mhm.
Oh, awesome. I do like that one.
Harriet Tubman.
Put it a little closer. It's a bit blurred.
I'm not too sure if you gotta move it back or
Maybe it's back. Maybe it's back, Rosemary. Back further, closer to your face.
No.
No.
I'll send
Over
you.
there.
Yeah.
In the middle.
But there's others too. But I mean, those are just a couple of examples. And just because I think it's important to get the information out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was one of my questions too, is like, how do we, make sure that we are educated and educating our kids? And you've provided so many resources that we can tap into, and resources that should probably even be like, and I'm not sure where it's at in terms of our educational system. It should be part of, I'm sure it should contribute to some curriculum, because it's important to have this knowledge. And we just, participated in this, our conversation. And from this, our eyes are opened, our hearts have been pricked, to want to do more and to be motivated to do more, and to see what can happen with resilience and patience and long suffering. But as you mentioned, we didn't get here overnight. It takes time for us to, do the work that we do. So I appreciate you sharing some of those resources. We should probably get a list of them that we can even, post.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to access those materials, I'm curious to know, as we're concluding, what's next for you? What's next for you?
Well, I guess what's next for me? I'm open to new opportunities. I am open to considering a lot of different things. I am a speaker. I love to have the opportunity to share with people. I also write, as you know. Sorry, I just brought up a screen that, I can't find you now. Where did you guys go? Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here.
We see you. That's the same. Yeah.
Okay.
We still see you.
It's with the multiple screens, right?
I'm telling you, the screens are falling all over the place. There we go. This is the wrong one too. Oh, this is so funny. Anyway, I am trying desperately to work. I'm working on a few other things. I haven't stopped, and I think the reality is that the Ontario Black History Society, for example, was not my job, and I have been doing what I have been doing because it was important to me, and because I felt it was something that needed to happen for the community. And so as a consequence, I have been, I continue to work, and I will continue to do what I can to make a difference for our community. I certainly was part of the planning of the vigil to mark the unfortunate situation that took place in Buffalo. And, I think that was important for us to have happen in our community. So there are various things that I continue to be part of. And of course, it's getting to be Emancipation Day. An organization, there's something called the Rosemary Sadlier Freedom Award, which is issued by Emancipation Arts and will be presented on national TV in Canada. And the first year it was presented to Julie Black.
Yes.
And last year it was presented to Debbie Young. I have no idea who it's being presented to this year, but I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, there's different things that I'm working on.
Rosemary, do you have a central place where if individuals are, if they want to find out a little bit more about you, your work, are your books on Amazon? Where does someone come to find out a little bit more about you and your work and the things that you offer the community?
Yeah, book you for a talk.
Absolutely. Well, they can certainly get in touch with you.
Yeah.
They can certainly get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. The tricky part is my name. It's Sadlier.
Right.
But yeah, I'm available, absolutely, and I'm still looking for you because you have.
We can see you, not to worry.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see.
I think you answered, my wrap-up question. Billy sort of asked it, but you alluded to it, and you pretty much said it. I was going to ask you, is that fire still hot? Is it burning? But you said I'm still working on things, so
Well, because we're not there, and the reality is, there is just so much that needs to happen because there's so much that did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah.
All right, I'm just looking you up here on Instagram.
Yes, I just found her on Instagram. I just followed.
There you go.
Yes. I am joining to follow, right? No, yes.
So invite everyone. Look for Rosemary on Instagram, her various platforms she mentioned on Facebook, as her name is spelled on the screen. And
Rosemary with a Y.
Yes.
Sadlier, S-A-D, like David, L-I-E-R.
Yes. Follow, stay in touch with what Rosemary is doing. And when you need services, you need to spread the knowledge. She's just been wonderful to grace us with her wisdom. And yeah, we need to do more of this.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Definitely glad to have you. Shout outs to you from Florida.
Well, thank you.
I am definitely
former Canadian.
a little bit more informed now about my history there in Canada, because as you said, when I was in high school, I didn't hear this stuff.
No.
You hear of little bits and pieces here and there, but we didn't get it. Canada was this noble country when I was learning history.
Well, it is, but it isn't.
Right.
The other side. Let's just say the other side. They never really shared with us, right? All right, so we're gonna have to sign off. I know Keisha is itching. She has a meeting that she has to jump into. Any last words, Keish, before you sign off?
No, I said it at the beginning. I continue to end it with it. We always bring knowledge and opportunity to those in our community. We had a wonderful guest today to really, give some foundation, with regards to, Black history and, things that we need to know. We need to know, about our history and, help to educate our children as well, with regards to that. And I just want to thank you so much for accepting the invitation and coming on this platform. We are for the community, and I know that you're definitely for the community. So thanks for taking out the time.
But being for the community doesn't mean that I'm not looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did that, but things change. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, man. I'll have all the hashtags to make sure that when individuals hit,
they see it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of the links.
Yes,
so
all right, so we're gonna sign off, folks. Thank you once again for joining us on the Thursdays, and for the individuals that took the time to whether to add a like or the question that we got. Shout outs to all of you. If you're watching this later on, then hey, all the necessary information will be attached.
Exactly.
And you can reach out and see Miss Rosemary Sadlier, invite her
Please
in.
stop looking for the screen that I lost.
Yeah, I see.
It's okay. All right, folks, we're gonna sign off, but you can stay
All right.
on, Rosemary. You don't have to leave.
Yeah,
We're just
stay on.
gonna
Yeah.
sign off.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks so much. I hope I see all of you again sometime soon.
Yes. Bye, everyone.